for more on the terrorist attack in New Zealand. I'm joined by Thomas Ruskin in New York. He is a former detective investigator for the New York City Police Department, and he is president of the CMP Protective and Investigative Group. And Thomas, I was going to say to you at the top of the interview that what I think a lot of people are thinking right now, which is that if it can happen in New Zealand, it can happen anywhere. And it turns out that was part of this man's manifesto. That was one of the reasons he went there.
Exactly. New York City Police Department has known for years that you have to worry about the lone wolf. And in this case, it appears right now, from the investigation as it's known, is that this man may have been a lone terrorist nut, but a lone wolf type of terrorist who carried this out by himself with his own ideologies, which he live streamed and broadcast during the shooting.
Now, the gunman, we are told, traveled from Australia to New Zealand with the intention of carrying out this attack. Do you think that there is any point along that route, from the moment he made the booking to showing his passport at the airport, to going through all the cameras that are at the airport, to presumably hiring a car, that sort of thing, is there any point along that route, along his journey, that he might have been intercepted somehow?
Well, the answer to your question is yes, he could have been intercepted, but you have to know what he's going there for. There has to be some kind of intelligence that would have been developed in advance of his trip or during his trip that would have alerted law enforcement that he was traveling from Australia to New Zealand or anywhere else, and what his motives were. Only the investigation as it unravels will tell us, was there some signs, intelligence, warning signs that could have alerted law enforcement that may have targeted him to be able to pick him out of the airport as he landed in New Zealand.
Well, clearly something's going to have to be done about this now. Something is going to have to change. Can you give us any insight into what that might be? I mean, might law enforcement the world over have to start targeting and even profiling people just in case?
Well, law enforcement does profile. I shouldn't say profile. What they do is they monitor. They look for intelligence. They would look for this guy to go on the web and potentially post his manifesto in a long enough time that A, you could identify him, B, as Jim alluded to in the pre-story, target him out of a needle, out of a haystack, and then be able to find him in advance of him, doing what he did. In the live stream, you see he had numerous weapons. He wrote on those weapons. There were scriptures on those weapons. Could one of those signs have lured law enforcement in advance of his killings to potentially have targeted him for at least questioning?
And what about that live streaming? I think this is one of the first times, if not the first time, that we've seen this live streamed in quite this way, garnering quite this amount of attention. Do you think that the social media companies should have been on it quicker? I mean, they do have hundreds of people who are monitoring these kind of feeds. Should they have taken it off faster than they actually did?
Well, that's something that's going to be reviewed, I'm sure, by not only the social media companies like Facebook and Instagram. It's something that has to be looked at by law enforcement. Should we be able to, from a law enforcement standpoint, be able to identify this ahead of time, somehow target it, maybe geo-target it to know whereabouts it's going to happen and stop it? It's not the first time we've had killings. We've had people in different states walk up to people live streaming how they're just going to murder someone because they didn't like the way that they looked or their race or their religion. So it has happened before. It's something that law enforcement and the social media companies have to develop more technology to be able to potentially stop it.
We'll leave it there for now, Thomas, although there are so many unanswered questions, as you alluded to. But thank you, Thomas Ruskin in